Love. L-O-V-E. L, you listen. You reflect in your own words. V, you validate. And E, you empathize. That's it, right? So Moshe, if you're listening to me and you complain about Thanksgiving at your parents, all you're doing is those four things. You are not resolving the problem. You are not arguing with me. You are not comparing what I said to some. Those are the only four things you do. If you're doing anything besides those things, you're going in the wrong direction. First of all, you listen, right? Listening means you're not doing this and you're not doing this, right? When I'm talking, it's you're listening to me, right? I mean, that's the first obvious point of communication is if I'm trying to talk to you and you are not listening, we are not getting anywhere. And this is a fairly simple, obvious thing, but again, like it bears mentioning, especially because sometimes men will listen like this. And they're actually listening, but it doesn't necessarily resonate with the person across from them. And so in session, I'll be like, hey, why don't you could you sort of turn towards her and like look at her? That might help. And it does. It does often. So you're going to listen to me. And then you're going to reflect in your own words. Meaning, if I said, I'm really worried about Zumba and all this thing, I need to know that you get it, right? So it's not enough that you get what I'm saying. That's the first thing, which is you have to understand me. And if you don't, you should ask, like, I don't get it. Why is, how does Zumba, make you feel better about yourself? That's a fair question, but you're trying to understand me. So you reflect back. Oh, so you feel like this. You're worried about your weight. You feel bad about yourself. Well, whatever I said, you say it in your own words, because that way, number one, you get it. And number two, I know that you get it. It doesn't help so much if you get it, but I don't know that you get it because I'm walking around and be like, he doesn't get me. He doesn't. But if you can say it back, like, oh, here's what you mean, right? Then I'm like, oh, he's listening and he gets what I'm going through. And that's really important. Now, note, I'm not asking you to agree with me, right? You may disagree that Zumba has any particular health benefits. And I don't know. I don't actually practice Zumba, so I couldn't tell you. But that's not the point right now, right? You don't have to agree with me, but you have to hear what I'm saying. And if it doesn't make sense to you, right? If I say, I really like Zumba because it makes me feel smarter. You could be like, I'm not sure I understand how there's an intellectual benefit to that. Could you explain that to me? Like, oh yeah, sure. And then I'll explain whatever I had in my mind. And so you'll reflect back to me, right? You take it in, you say, oh, he's worried about that. Okay, so you're worried about how you're going to look in 5 years if you don't do some kind of exercise. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I get that. Right. So that's the next part is validating. That makes sense. I'm not saying I agree with you, right? None of this means that I agree with you. In the exploration conversation, it's explicit that there's no agreement needed. I just have to get it. Oh, this makes sense, right? If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm like, I'm just not seeing why that's there. But hopefully it does make sense to me. And I say, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're worried about your weight. You feel like you're gaining too much and you feel bad about yourself. I can understand that. And then the empathy is, oh, that sucks. Oh, it's such a bummer. I'm sorry you feel that way. Right. Or maybe it's just like, I give you a hug or like, oh, yeah, that's rough. Just saying like, hey, I care about what's going on for you. Right. Because again, if I don't care, if I can say like, oh, yeah, you're worried about gaining weight. Well, all right, big deal. If I don't actually care about what bothers you, and I think that you should only be worried when I say you're worried, and you should only be concerned about the things that I think are concerning, we're lacking in the relationship here. Like if I'm an arrogant and self-centered person, that's going to take some work in addition to actually like talking about things.